my friend John Hood, who is now president of the Pope Foundation and weekly contributor to the statewide talk show NC Spin. Did I get your title right? Is it president of the Pope Foundation?
So far, I don't know. After this interview, I'm not sure what happened. But
John Hood, ladies and gentlemen. How are you, John?
I'm doing fine. Hope you are.
Yeah. I'm in. We had Doug Raymond on. He kind of gave his analysis this morning. It looks to me like all of a sudden Rubio is for real, and we kept wondering if there was going to be a more moderate Republican that would pop up here. And I think moderate Republicans this morning are rejoicing because it looks like Marco Rubio can now make a run at this thing. Do you agree?
I certainly agree. I'm not sure I would describe him as a moderate. I think his
maybe I should say more moderate. How about that?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I think I looked at the American Conservative Union ratings recently, and I think Ted Cruz was 100%, and Marco Rubio was 96%.
Yeah.
Yes, there is some daylight, but not much.
Interesting.
I think the difference is more stylistic than it is ideological.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And remember that Rubio ran in 2010 against a moderate Republican. He was the Tea Party conservative challenger. He won. That was Charlie Crist. And before that, Rubio spent 6 years in the legislature, including Speaker of the House in Florida, when there was a tremendous amount of conservative policy success. So there are moderates in the race. I think John Kasich, who is fiscally conservative or was in Congress, is probably more accurately described as a moderate. He expanded Medicaid. His rhetoric is much more moderate. So the way I think about both parties is that they are closely divided. Now, I don't know that they're bitterly divided, but they are closely divided. We saw that with the Democrats because, as you say, they're basically tied in Iowa. And we see it now with the Republicans where, yes, Cruz won. He beat Trump by 4 points and Rubio by 5 points, roughly. But I think a better way to consider the situation is that each of these three individuals has, give or take, about a quarter of the vote. And so you've got each of those that are fairly close together. I think that the way the delegate count works is Cruz gets 8 and Trump gets 7 and Rubio gets 7.
That's right.
And then on the Democratic side, they split the votes equally. So
actually, the way Politico.com has it this morning, Clinton, even though she got less than half of 1% more of the vote, and she got some of that by flipping a coin, she gets 28 delegates, and Bernie only gets 21. I don't really understand how that system works.
Again, I mean, well, I think it has to do with I don't think they're distributed on a strictly proportional basis. It might have something to do with districts. It depends on the state. I don't remember the rules. But even if you think about it as 28 and 21, these are still very close together numbers.
Yeah.
So my point is that the two parties have they've always had different factions, and they still have different factions. But what I think I would argue that at least the Cruz faction and the Rubio faction are different in style, but not all that much in substance.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the Trump factor is different entirely. I mean, it is a more populist, not particularly conservative sort of group of Republican-leaning voters. I really think the Democrats have the bigger problem here. That they've got a significant difference between these two. I mean, if half of your party in your early state is voting for a socialist and the other half is voting for, Hillary Clinton, I mean, this is not a picture of a party headed for success.
Yeah.
I would also observe that the Democrats have, with all due respect, they have elderly candidates. That they had candidates of the past. And it's not the way we're used to thinking about the two parties. You're used to think about the Republicans as the party of the mature old dudes, and the Democrats have the young folks. Well, the presidential race is working entirely the other way.
The crazy thing about that is that all the young people, well, not all, a lot of the young people are migrating to Bernie Sanders, which really scares the hell out of me. And I thought a year ago that the young college hipsters might migrate to Rand Paul, but that just hasn't happened because Bernie has out. What's the word? He's in favor of more free stuff.
Yeah, I mean that's essentially the issue. That sure, there's a libertarian group among young people. There always has been, and at least since the 70s, it has been basically a Republican-leaning voting group. It's voted for Reagan. It's voted for the Republicans all through the time. But it's not a very large group, and young people do tend to skew a bit more liberal. Now, in the 80s, young people voted for Reagan, but lots of people, everybody voted for Reagan. He won 49 states. His strongest support was among young people. But those Reagan voters from the 80s are now my age. I mean, they're in their 40s and early 50s. And so they're a mainstay of the Republican Party. But the younger generations today, yes, in the Democratic Party, they're voting for Bernie over Hillary, but lots and lots of young voters voted in the Republican primary in Iowa.
John Hood on the phone with us. John, where is Trump now, in your opinion? Where do you think was there any message in this for Trump last night?
He's got two problems and one big advantage. The big advantage is that he basically has run his entire campaign on free media because the media can't stop talking about him. And even in his disappointing performance in Iowa, he will dominate much of the political discussion. And so he has a lot of fuel for his fire. His problem is, first of all, I think he has about a quarter of the vote, maybe a third, but doesn't have much more room to grow. So as candidates begin to drop out, I think those voters disproportionately go to Rubio and Cruz. And so I think that Trump has that problem. The other problem he has, though, is that his entire campaign is based upon I'm the winner. And now he did a very good job, I thought, last night of not sort of screwing up his moment. He was just very nice and gracious and then ended his speech, which was smart. But essentially it's the trash-talking guy who yells and screams at you and taunts you and makes jokes about you and then goes into the game and he loses the game.
Yeah.
I mean, what happens next? Does he keep trash-talking you? At some point, he has to have a different kind of a message.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that's one of his big problems here is his message is kind of an inevitability and I can make America great again message. It's not that specific and substantial, and it's not very uplifting. And I think that here's the way I've been thinking about the three candidates real quick. They all have an opinion about conservatives and conservatism and how it fits into the political scene. Cruz thinks that there are enough conservatives to win the presidential race. They just don't vote. So he's going to turn them out. He thinks that's the problem. Trump thinks there aren't enough conservatives to win, and that's why he's not particularly conservative. I mean, he tries to mix and match. He has some conservative views here, some more liberal views there, and he's trying to assemble a coalition of the traditional Republican conservative base plus lots of other people. Rubio agrees with Trump that there aren't enough straight-out conservatives to win the election, but he believes he can persuade people to become conservative. So he's basically doing missionary work and trying to recruit more people into the conservative movement and thus generate more Republican votes. Trump has sort of given up on that as a strategy and is trying to be less ideological. And Cruz thinks there are enough conservatives already that just don't vote. And that's the way the three candidates think about the race. I think that Cruz's math is wrong, but it's a coherent strategy. I think that Rubio's strategy is coherent. I think Trump's strategy is ultimately not coherent and won't work.
John Hood, as usual, a very cerebral analysis of things.
That sounds like an insult in some fashion.
No, everything you say is cerebral. That's why I love talking to you, because I never get you on this show or even just have a phone conversation with you where I don't feel like I feel like I've come away and I'm better for it and I've learned something. But last question for you, and I'll let you go. I know you need to get to work this morning. if you're a Democrat and you're the Democratic Party this morning, I've been on this thing for years about how Democrats, particularly Eastern North Carolina Democrats, I know a lot of older Eastern North Carolina Democrats that still believe that they're in the party of John F. Kennedy.
Yes.
They're Democrats seriously because of John F. Kennedy. And
that's right. You're absolutely right.
And I think that they need to stop and smell the coffee. This is not the party of John F. Kennedy. The future of the Democratic Party, if I'm a Democrat and I wake up this morning and I look at the fact that 50% of the voters in Iowa want a socialist to be the president of the United States, I've got to reevaluate whether I can continue to be a member of that party or not. Don't you agree?
I agree. I think that they would partly see it as, gosh, there's a lot of people in this party who are really hardcore left-wing. But the other way to think about it is the alternative, Hillary Clinton, is so badly damaged by all the things we know about that there are voters in Iowa who do not share Bernie Sanders' socialist views. They don't think that we're about to, venerate Hugo Chavez and nationalize industries and so forth. But they couldn't bring themselves to vote for Hillary Clinton because they either don't like her, don't trust her, or they think she's going to be indicted.
Yeah.
So, if I'm a Democrat, I'm kind of nervous. I'm more than nervous. I'm anxious. I'm very anxious. Now, I think Hillary Clinton will be the nominee. Okay, but Sanders, when he gets to South Carolina and other places like that, I think he will fizzle out. But I think that there's a great deal of angst here among Democrats that, yes, Hillary's probably our nominee. We're stuck with Hillary. But what happens if she gets indicted?
Yeah.
I don't think she will, because I think President Obama understands everything I just said, and they will not indict her because they think that would be damaging to the Democratic Party in the long run. Now, it's the wrong decision, but I think that's what they will do, or at least indictments will wait until after the election.
I lied. I thought of another question I got to ask you. Now that Iowa's done, and you look at this, and this looks like a blueprint to get Bloomberg in the race as an independent to me. Because he's looking at this and going, Democrats they just cannot buy into Hillary. They've even gone so far as to vote for crazy Bernie. And
right.
And on the Republican side, there's still a lot of uneasiness about Trump and Cruz, and no one's the clear winner there. I could be the candidate that gets in here and becomes the compromise candidate. And I think that's possibly true. But what ends up happening every time you have a third-party candidate, it seems to screw the Republicans.
Mm-hmm.
If Bloomberg gets in, are the Republicans screwed?
No. I think about the situation a bit differently. Remember that the third-party candidate that had most recently determined the outcome of an election was Ralph Nader.
Yeah.
It wasn't Ross Perot, though I think Ross Perot clearly damaged George H.W. Bush. But Ralph Nader put George W. Bush in the White House, okay, because he took enough votes away from the Democrats. I think that Michael Bloomberg, while having nothing in common with Ralph Nader, is more likely to hurt Democrats than Republicans.
Really?
Particularly in this scenario. Now, if it was Donald Trump or something, I'd have a different view. If Trump was the Republican nominee, I'd have a different view.
Mm-hmm. But
I think it is more likely that Rubio or Cruz would be the nominee, in which case I think that Bloomberg opens up possibilities for Republicans to win some states. I think Bloomberg will be mostly attractive in the Northeast and out west and on the West Coast and maybe Florida. Now, Florida's a problem. Bloomberg could probably hurt Republicans in Florida, but I think he could help them in Pennsylvania.
New York.
I think New York's probably out of reach.
New York's
scenario.
Not in question, is it? But how about maybe states
but
like...
I think you go to Ohio.
Yeah, Ohio.
You go to
Illinois.
Wisconsin, Michigan. These are places where I think Bloomberg would take votes probably away from Hillary Clinton rather than, let's say, a Marco Rubio or Ted Cruz. It's just my view. We think about Bloomberg as a former Republican mayor of New York. It's not the way most people think about him. They think about him as a left of center politician.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
he's been fairly Republican through his career, except he came up with the I guess he's best known now for the soft drink ban, which
Yeah.
which looks
Gun control.
Yeah,
Gun control.
well,
is a
gun
big
control,
issue for
right,
him.
right. So those two issues make him look very liberal. Yeah.
In a more sensible city, New York is not a sensible city, but in a more sensible city, he would have been a Democratic mayor, a moderate Democratic mayor.
Yeah.
Because of what was going on in New York, he decided to run as a Republican, but he's essentially a Democrat. He's always been essentially a Democrat. He's just a moderate. I mean, of course, I'd rather have Michael Bloomberg than, left-wingers, from my perspective. He's not a left-winger, but he is a left-of-center candidate, and I think actually, if he were to run in the scenario I'm describing, I don't see him taking a lot of states away from the Republicans. I see him opening up opportunities. Again, he's not going to win. Independent candidates can't win.
Yeah.
But he really needs Donald Trump to be the Republican nominee for his story work. Because, of course, I know many Republicans who would vote for Michael Bloomberg instead of Donald Trump. No question.
All right, John Hood. Thank you, John.